Hello, and welcome to On Point. I'm David Reyes. This October, during the Major League Baseball playoffs, Los Angeles Dodger fans have listened to some of the final games that legendary broadcaster Jaime Jarrín will ever call. Jarrín has handled play-by-play duties in Spanish for the Dodgers since 1959, the team's second year here in LA. Since then, he's been inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, the Dodgers Ring of Honor, and witnessed many of the greatest moments in the team's history. Jarrín is retiring at the end of the season, marking an end to a 64-year career. Today on Point, Jaime Jarrín is our guest, along with his son, Jorge, who himself was a Dodger broadcaster. Here's our conversation recorded last April. Now joining me today is the Hall of Famer, the man himself, Mr. Jaime Jarrín, and our second guest is his son, his former colleague too, Mr. Jorge Jarrín. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today.
This is Jaime. How are you? Nice to see you.
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you. Fine, thank you. Taking advantage of this day when the Dodgers are not playing.
How are you doing, Jorge?
David, I'm doing well. It's an honor to be here with you. Happy to participate in this televised podcast for all of you at CSUN. We're very pleased to be here and honored that you invited us.
Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Sure.
Jaime, after you're retiring at the end of this season, after 64 years, how are you feeling about the season? Are you excited, sad, or nervous?
Well, I don't think so. It haven't hit me yet, but I think as we close to the end of the season, I'm sure that it will be quite different. I'm looking forward to finish the season and see what happens.
What made you decide that this should be your last season?
I think it's time to change priorities. I think 64 years is enough. I want to do some other things, especially I want to help my son Jorge and my son Mauricio funding the Jarrín Foundation that we established about 3 or 4 years ago. So I think it's time for me to leave the Dodgers and dedicate my time to the foundation.
You know, David, my dad came to this conclusion, but I beat him by 1 year, which most people couldn't believe, that I chose to retire before my father. My father, as you mentioned, has 64 consecutive seasons calling Dodger baseball as the lead play-by-play announcer. I do not have a 64 season stretch. I was more than happy after we won the World Series in 2020. Said that's it. I've had the opportunity to really do so many things, and to end my broadcasting career alongside my father was just too good to pass up. I still want to take advantage of good health and being relatively young at 67 years that I chose to retire. The reaction, of course, did not surprise me in that people were at first thinking, oh my God, Jaime's retiring after all these years? Jaime's going to retire? I said, no. It's not Jaime. Me, Jorge, I'm retiring. They go, oh, in that case, that's okay. No problem. It's like, you can go, but don't let your father leave just yet. But, I think there's nobody else in baseball who can boast a tenured career of 64 consecutive seasons with one baseball team. Vince Scully holds the record at 67, but take in consideration that his first 7 years of his career as the broadcaster for the Dodgers were in Brooklyn. So in essence, my father, Jaime, who's being modest here, has spent more time behind the microphone in Los Angeles for the Dodgers than anybody else. And he's just come to that point where he says, it's time. He's still going to be around, but he just won't be calling the games anymore.
He earned it.
He earned it.
For me, no question about it. The Dodgers have been great to me. The audience has been fabulous, really. And I think my longevity is because the followers that we have had. It is unbelievable how they can follow the Dodgers the way they did. And that's the reason. I never thought that they would last this long. I thought that probably I would stay with the Dodgers 5, 6, 7, 8 years and move to something else. But I fell in love with the baseball. The Dodgers have treated me very well. And I was so pleased to see that the Dodgers really paid special attention to the Latino community in Southern California. So I think those are the reasons why I have lasted this long with the Dodgers.
I'll jump back to Jorge. Jorge, first of all, like, what was it like growing up? Listening to your dad call Dodger games when you were younger.
Wow. You know, there was never a time in my life when I did not understand or know that my father and my family were connected to the Dodgers. They've always been there. So I basically grew up around the organization. I took in my very first game in 1959, 1960 at the Coliseum when my dad took me to a game prior to the game starting. I still remember just playing in the booth, and they were doing a pregame interview of a player by the name of Wally Moon. Now, most people nowadays, unless you're a die-hard Dodger fan, will go, who? Wally Moon? Well, Wally Moon was famous for the moon shots. He was a prolific hitter who could pull the ball over the left field fence at the Coliseum. And at that time, the left field fence, because of the configuration of the stadium, was only 210 feet away from home plate. So they erected this very tall screen. And to get it out, you had to lift it up and over the screen, and they called it the moon shot. So my memories date all the way back to the Coliseum, 1959, and Wally Moon is the first major league professional ball player that I ever saw in person. But growing up around it, it was more of a thing for my neighbors and my friends always asking me, does Sandy Koufax come over to your house for dinner? Does Don Drysdale hang out with your dad? Does Maury Wills give you any tips or anything? And of course, like any 7 or 8 year old, I said, yeah, sure. I made it up. Of course, they didn't come over to the house for dinner or anything. They were too busy with their own private time. But I used to embellish and tell all my kids that, oh, sure, no problem, until they asked me to prove it. And then I always would come up with some excuse as to, oh, Sandy can't make it tonight, or Don called and he's not feeling very well, so he's not going to make it, but we can go to a game. And I could always get by asking my dad to take us to a Dodger game and drop us off at the top of the deck. And then I could stall or make up whatever reason. But, I give my mom a lot of credit because my mom made it so, because my father, when he would travel, he'd be gone, and then he'd come home from a road trip and he'd be at the ballpark every night. So during the summer, we didn't get a chance to see my dad very much, but my mom always made us feel that we weren't missing out on anything. We never felt neglected. And I credit my mom and dad for having such a wonderful marriage and partnership that they were able to do that. And, I just fell in love with the Dodgers as I grew older, playing Little League and going to the games. And during high school, I started working as an usher at Dodger Stadium. And that's where I even met my wife. And we've been married for 40 years now. Oh, wow. And I never thought that I would have a career working for the team, but I ended up as an airborne traffic reporter flying around the helicopter for KABC for 28 years. And then after that, I was able to segue into a sports broadcasting career. And I ended up working for the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2012. I called my first game on television along with the great Manny Mota, and he was the color commentator. And I did selected games for Fox Deportes en Español, and that became 35 games, became 50 games, 50 games became 100 games. And then in 2015, I was asked to join the broadcast booth, the broadcast team in the booth with my father. And my father and I became the only father and son radio team in baseball. Yeah. So it's been very interesting. I've been very fortunate, and it's something that has been very close to me. I feel very comfortable around Dodger Stadium, having grown up there.
It has been a blessing for me to be, with the Dodgers and to see in action the best of the best. I have seen the superstars like Willie Mays, Juan Marichal. I have seen the best of the best, Henry Aaron and Stan Musial, Roberto Clemente, Tom Seaver, Gian, so many of them. And also I have been so blessed to be working alongside the titans of my profession, like Vince Kelly, Jack Buck, John Miller, Oh, so the best of the best.
Yeah.
It has been a great, very, very right for me.
Okay. I mean, I think it's the perfect moment to play a clip. This is a big fan of yours, Jaime, and you might know him.
He's going to show you something.
Anyone that actually ever saw him and got to know him like I did, got the extra lucky layer of just seeing the probably the classiest, friendliest, helpful person in all of radio. He didn't have to do any of the things he did for me, which is just basically being a friend, being someone that I could talk to, inviting me into his broadcast booth, and letting me just be there when I had nowhere else to go. He didn't have to do any of those things. He's Jaime Jarrín.
When Jorge used to travel with us, I really miss him alone because we were great friends. He was covering the Dodgers. I really miss him now. He has been very kind enough to invite me to his show a couple of times, and I wish him the best. I am so glad to see him because the way he started with the Dodgers and he tried to improve himself, and now he's a big star on the microphone.
Yes.
If I may jump in, Dad, you call him.
Better known as A. Martinez.
A. Martinez
Yes.
from the NPR, yes.
Yes, that's A. Martinez. Now, do you know why they call him A. Martinez? Because he doesn't have the initial A. He's Jorge Martinez, but
Yes.
he used to remember people going, hey, George Martinez, hey, and he just stuck with the A instead of hey, the A. Martinez.
Yes.
Also, he's my countryman. He comes from Ecuador.
Yeah,
Yes.
Your paisano.
Yes, paisano.
Yeah.
Good guy from NPR.
Yes.
Gran persona, tremenda persona, Jorge A. Martinez.
Jaime, before you started your career with the Dodgers, you were in radio, and how did you get into broadcasting baseball games?
Well, it's a matter of being at the right time in the right place. When I came from Ecuador to the United States in 1955, I didn't know nothing about baseball. Then I got interested in baseball, watching the World Series in New York in 1955 between the Yankees and the Brooklyn Dodgers. And then I started going on weekends to see the two AAA teams that we had in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Angels, we used to play at the Wrigley Field, which was a ballpark in the south central Los Angeles, 46 and Avalon, and to see the Hollywood Stars at the Gilmore Field. Those places have disappeared now. So I used to get it. Then I started grasping something about baseball in those 3 years. And then the Dodgers came to the West Coast in 1958. By then, I was the news and sports director of KW, and the station got the rights to do the games in Spanish. And one day, the owner and GM of the KW, Mr. William Beaton, called me and said, "Jaime, I want you to be one of the two announcers doing baseball." I told him, "Mr. Beaton, thank you very much, but I don't think that I am really equipped to be in front of a microphone describing games because I know some baseball, but not enough to be describing baseball." So he liked me very much. I was young. I was 23 years old, and he said, "Jaime, this is a great future for you. I know that you can do it because you are doing this. You are doing boxing every Thursday from the Olympic Auditorium." And he said, "I want you to be the one with the two announcers." Rene Cardenas was the number one announcer in the booth. And in 1959, I started with the Dodgers little by little. And I thinking that I will stay with them for 5, 6, 7 years. But here I am, after 64 years, still doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you were the voice for the Latinos, you and Rene at that time. I know in Ecuador, you didn't see baseball.
Nothing at all. In Quito, we don't play baseball at all. So that's why I didn't see any baseball game over there. I never saw a baseball in my life, never saw a bat or a mitt, nothing like that. I just, I discovered the game when I came to the United States in 1955.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think this is a perfect time to play the second clip from A. Martinez, or Jorge Luis Martinez, as you know him.
I listened to him before I listened to Vin Scully. Before I even knew who Vin Scully was, I listened to Jaime Jarrín because he's doing games in Spanish on the radio. my grandpa and my uncles would always say, that's an Ecuadorian. Es un paisano haciendo los juegos. So it was neat to know that he was from the same country that my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and my mom was from. And he's doing baseball games.
Well, I have been blessed very much doing games. I have been receiving so many accolades along my career. But the thing that really, really reaches me is when I am going to the supermarket, to the bank, to a restaurant, people stop me and say, Mr. Jarrín, I'm sorry, but I wanted to thank you very much because thanks to you, I spend more time with my grandfather. Thanks to you, my father used to take me to the back of the house to listen to the games. Thanks to you, my mother fell in love with the game and she fell in love with your voice calling games. So that really, really comes to me as the best accolade that I can get. When people recognize me as member of the family.
Mm-hmm.
It has been a blessing to reach so many millions of households in Southern California doing the games for the Dodgers.
Yes, I mean, you're going to be missed a lot, but, I mean, Pepe Ñíguez, he's doing a good job. I mean, he's an awesome commentator, and I think...
Yes, he has been with me several years, I think more than 20 years now. Yeah. And he has been, I have been very, very blessed to have many partners who have been great. My booth is like a living room in my house. It has been great. I have had several. I have René Cardenas. I have worked with Rodolfo Hoyos, with Jose Elfad Garcia, who was a great announcer, and I learned a lot from him. Then we had Pepe Ñíguez, Miguel Alonso for a while, and René came for a second time to the Dodgers. So I have had great partners in the booth, really, really fantastic friends.
The best teachers to...
Yes, and teachers also. René and Jose Elfad Garcia have been my teachers. And I have been able to open the doors to the young guys that were coming along.
Okay. I think we should talk about and jump to Fernando Valenzuela. I mean, what impact did Fernando have to Los Angeles in your career?
Well, Fernando has been, oh my goodness, I don't have enough words to tell how big Fernando was. I think 81 was a year that we will never see again. The Fernando Mania was something very unique, very special. It's a young kid who came from Mexico, 19 years old, a little bit chubby, long hair, no word of English. And he took the country by a storm, not only Los Angeles. And it was an unbelievable season, I think 81. And he became the best ambassador of Mexico. And I was able to be with him everywhere because the Dodgers asked me to be with him, to translate for him. And I was with him everywhere, even to the White House. That was a great experience for me to see him at the White House among the most powerful people in the world, starting with the President Ronald Reagan and the Vice President George Bush, father. So 1981 is a year that we'll never see again here in Southern California. He did for baseball like no other ball player did. He created so many new baseball fans. It was unbelievable. My ratings, here in Jorge A will tell you, or if you get a 3 rating in radio, it's a fabulous here. Where we got an 8.6 rating on radio here on KTNQ 1981, 1982. It was unbelievable.
If I may jump in.
Yes.
One of the things that's also important to note, Fernando is recognized for the advent of Fernando Mania and the impact that he had. My father just spoke about that, creating so many fans and bringing people to the game. And remember, in 1981, Fernando came up at the tail end of 1980. But in 1981, when he joined the rotation out of necessity and took over and then went on this incredible shutout streak and just brought all this national attention. The other thing that Fernando, and then we forget about sometimes in talking about creating fans and such, is that Fernando also brought a focus to the fact that the Dodgers were the very first team in Major League Baseball to establish a dedicated Spanish-speaking broadcast to its fans. Now, some teams had dabbled in it, doing certain select games, maybe a game of the week in Spanish, or some teams had done 30 games out of the season, or 50, a limited number. But the Dodgers were the first. And in doing so, and having my father there, who was very comfortable in his role of being able to explain and give Fernando's answers in English, something that Fernando could not do at that time, also put a lot of focus on the attention that the Dodgers had a Spanish broadcast team. And it wasn't long after that you started to see more and more teams, especially in the Southwest. The San Francisco Giants and the San Diego Padres follow suit. Other teams, the Houston Astros. Then finally, when there was a team again in Florida during the regular season, they added a Spanish broadcast. The Yankees and the Mets and others. So this had an impact of really spreading baseball to other communities that hadn't received it on a regular basis. And I think that's something that's very key in the development of our Spanish language broadcasting.
All started when Mr. Walter O'Malley came to Los Angeles with the Dodgers, and he took a flight on a helicopter to see the demographics of Southern California. And he said, I'm going to, because some people start questioning him, why are you covering the games in Spanish also? And he will say, because I wanted to give them something in their own language so they can understand perfectly everything. And we had to teach practically baseball to many, many people. I used to get, we don't have now, we didn't have in those days what we have now, the internet, the Twitter and things like that. In those days, it was phone calls or letters. And I was swamped by phone calls, by letters, people asking me to explain why this guy was out from 6 to 3. I had to teach them, look, baseball, every position has a number. The pitcher is number 1, the catcher number 2, first baseman number 3, so on. And I said, if the ball goes to shortstop, what's the number there? Number 6. And the shortstop throws to first, number 3. That's why he is out from 6 to 3. So we have to explain the people. We have to teach them the game. And it has been great because I remember, when I started with the Dodgers, like in 59,
yes.
People Latinos coming to the ballpark, coming to the Coliseum was 8%, no more than 10%. Now, at Dodger Stadium, Latinos coming are between 42 and 46%, and probably more. It's amazing. Well, Latinos are very sports-minded people, so they love games, they love baseball, they love soccer, they love boxing. So it has been very gratifying to being able to teach them this sport that was new to me.
Yeah. We don't have that much time left, but I'm going to ask you the big question. Jorge, I'm going to go first.
Okay.
What is your dad's legacy here in Los Angeles?
What is my father's legacy?
Yes.
My father's legacy here in Los Angeles, which actually really spreads to a larger area, is the fact that he is a pioneer. There are those like myself who followed along in broadcasting in which the doors were already open. I could have never gotten that opportunity had not my father been amongst the very first to establish and create a level that was as good as, if not superior, to, in many cases, some of his counterparts in English. So in doing so, he's a true pioneer, as he just mentioned, coining certain phrases. There was no word for home run. Fue un cuadrangular. You would use almost mathematical terms to describe certain things like that. So my father and René Cárdenas and Jose El Fat Garcia really are considered true pioneers, and they have been doing it for so long that we now have 3 generations that have grown up listening and having my father as the soundtrack of their youth through summers, and as to adults as they pass that on being a Dodger fan. You don't become a Dodger fan, you're raised a Dodger fan if you're a Latino.
Jaime, to conclude the show, can you give us your signature call? Let's just pretend it's Game 7 of the World Series, tie game, bottom of the 9th. Dodgers are batting.
Okay. Then Hay una out, amigos. Ya estoy viendo las casitas en mi pueblo. Se acerca a su fin esta jornada. Listo el pitcher, tiene las señas, viene el lanzamiento, batazo profundo al jardín central. La pelota se va, se va, se va y despídala con un beso. Se fue de cuadrangular.
Wow,
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's the famous call.
And you know, that famous call has now been enshrined in places like the Smithsonian Institute. There is currently an exhibit that has been extended called Play Ball in Washington, D.C. And my father and some of his memorabilia are a big part of that exhibit. And so it's something that has been recognized on a national basis. And of course, in 1998, my father was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Mm-hmm. So it's been an impressive career, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. That was Jaime Jarrín, the Hall of Famer. This is his last and final season after 64 years. I would also like to thank his son Jorge for joining us. It's been an honor and pleasure talking to you guys. Thank you so much.
David, thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching On Point. We'll be right back with more.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Or maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
When I never graduated from high school, I realized I wanted to go back to school because I didn't want to work these back-breaking jobs the rest of my life. With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed to come back to school. I felt accomplished, made me feel that I could take on whatever challenges life throws at you.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Thank you for watching On Point. You can follow us on social media at CSUN On Point. You can hear us on KCSN 88.5 on Sunday mornings 5:30. And you can watch us on LA 36 and Santa Clarita Valley Television. For all of us here on Point, I'm Sophie Bredahl.